Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. Time for another edition of the RTI Lowdown. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by my good friend and On3 Sports impresario. It's Chris Lowe. Here we are on a Sunday again. CeeLo, how you doing?
Doing great. Last Sunday of April.
Yes.
A good Saturday for the Tennessee baseball. An excellent Saturday for the Tennessee baseball team. And it's that time of year, man, when we've seen in college baseball, you better be playing your best baseball, and it doesn't really matter what you've done at this point. If you're playing well, I'll go back to Ole Miss a few years ago, Mississippi State a few years ago. Those teams, in a lot of ways, sort of like this Tennessee team, they weren't playing great throughout much of the year, but they got hot at the right time. They sort of snuck in the tournament, and they won national titles. So it would be pretty cool if Tennessee could follow that same formula. But a really, really big Saturday for them to win both over Alabama. Or Friday, actually. I can get my day.
Yeah. No, you're right, though. You never know, man. It's just you got to keep knocking the wins down, get to, live to play another day in the postseason. And this team has shown some moments that feels like we're going to talk about that today. It felt like a bit of a turning point maybe on Friday. It was pretty impressive. We do have a lot to discuss today. Before we get to that, though, let me ask you out there listening, we always appreciate you spending time with us. If you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. That is always so important to us. We always appreciate the support, but follow through and make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you're listening to us as a podcast, that's great too. Just make sure you're make us part, I should say, of your regular rotation by downloading our podcast. We're available wherever you listen to your podcast, whatever platform, we're there. And we do appreciate the support. Like I said, a lot to discuss today. We'll start here with the NFL draft in a moment, where we saw 5 Vols get drafted and 7 more that immediately signed undrafted free agent deals right after the draft wrapped up. We'll recap all of that activity for you, which didn't go quite as many thought it may go, most notably for Jamad McCoy's camp after the precipitous fall of Mod's draft stock over the weekend. We're also going to talk Vol basketball, headlined by the announcement most of us were expecting from Nate Ament. And, of course, we'll catch up on Vol baseball, just like we were saying, who may have saved their season with a series win over Alabama, highlighted by a dominant doubleheader sweep on Friday. But before all that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode of The Lowdown is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help with your home, your car, or business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. And as always, we appreciate their partnership with The Lowdown. Topic A for today, the 2026 NFL Draft is come and gone, and the Vols, along with the SEC as a whole, get a bit of a harsh reality check in the first round. First off, for the first time in years, and I mean years, the SEC didn't lead the way in total first-round draft picks. The SEC had 7 of the first 32 players chosen, but they trailed the Big Ten, who had 10, and they were only barely ahead of the ACC and the Big 12, who each had 6. To me, Chris, this is all further proof that NIL and the portal has entirely changed the paradigm when it comes to feeding talent to the NFL. It's no longer the SEC and everyone else. It's there's just a lot of talent all around the country in all the conferences.
I don't think anybody's surprised. I think when we went down this road that you knew that it was going to be spread out a little bit more. I do think, Bob, as you look at the top 2 or 3 rounds, though, the SEC still leads the way in what I would call premium draft picks, not just the first round, but if you throw the second and the third round, they still are at top. And I don't think that's going to change. They continue. I think the SEC continues to recruit in and out of the portal, high school and portal guys as well as anybody. But no question now, if you are not one of the usual suspects, with your Texas Tech, your Indiana, a lot of schools, you're able to go in the portal and get guys. You're able to get guys maybe that are squeezed out that would be a 3/4-star recruit because the school they wanted to go to maybe is loading up on portal guys. So they go to another school that they wouldn't have gone to normally. Maybe they've gone to a bigger school. And those guys have a chance to go to, a different type of school. So I think that's what I think most people thought would happen. And, it's going to continue to happen. And I don't look at it like the sky's falling for the SEC. I understand the SEC hasn't won a national title in 3 years, but they've been there. They've been swimming in those waters, so to speak. And,
Right.
We'll see how it all shakes out. I think from 2-3 years from now, it's going to look so different. The playoffs are going to expand. Who knows, 16 to 24. And then it's almost going to become a second season, really is what it's going to become, a second season. So then who does have the most depth, who stays healthy, the longevity of being able to keep your team together. And I know the gap now drives coaches crazy. If you get a bye, i.e. Georgia, Ohio State, you go 26 days without playing a game, and those two teams have lost their first game. In fact, those teams that have gotten by the last 2 years, Bob, are at 1-7 combined. And so there's all sorts of newness to college football. And I guess my advice to people is strap in because it's going to get only newer as we go forward.
Yeah, the other statistic I heard, which I found interesting, and again, I think it does speak to not just the SEC, but the power conferences. This was the first draft in recent memory, the first draft where there were no FCS players taken in the first 5 rounds. So, you used to have those diamond in the rough guys that could pop up sometimes in the second or third round. They're nowhere to be found now because most of them are moving on to bigger schools.
Yeah, I think 48%, there were 257 draft picks. I think that's right. 48% of those transferred at some point in their career.
Yeah.
So almost half.
Yeah.
Well, that's the new reality. And the other one is there's a number, I don't have it verbatim, the number of Power 4 conference players drafted compared to schools outside the Power 4. It's like 90%, 10%. It's maybe more than that. There's just staggering the difference in the kids who played in the ACC, SEC, Big 10, and Big 12 compared to the other schools. So those are the types of numbers that I think we're going to continue to see a lot of those. And that trend, I think, will continue to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so, like you said, there were 7 SEC players picked in the first round. None of them were Tennessee Vols. And what was interesting is there was talk of 2 Vols possibly going in the first round leading up to the draft. Those players were Jamad McCoy and Colton Hood. And at one point, not that long ago, I'd say maybe a month ago, there was even talk that Chris Brazzell Jr. may sneak into the late first round. But alas, none of them went in the first. As a matter of fact, only 1 made it into the second round. So let's do a quick recap. Leading the way for Tennessee in terms of Vols in the draft, Colton Hood goes in the second round, the 37th pick overall to the New York Giants. I think that's an awesome story, honestly. Colton Hood comes here from Colorado, felt like he wasn't really wanted at Colorado, comes here, played great for the Vols, and ends up getting a huge contract coming his way, going to the New York Giants, which, by the way, they're putting together with John Harbaugh at the helm a pretty good defense too. Players like Brian Burns and Abdul Carter and I think Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, their defense is pretty strong, and I think it's a great landing spot for Colton Hood.
Tennessee's done a nice job the last couple of years of bringing guys in, transfers who've been key additions. Christian Jamad McCoy 2 years ago when he played was outstanding. Hood this year, Joey Aguilar, guys that, as you said, we're looking for, a new home, a new place. And Hood comes from Colorado. McCoy comes from Oregon State. Joey from UCLA, all the way across the country to play. And you hate what happened to McCoy. And that's having covered the NFL way back in my career, when the Panthers, they're actually the first 2 years of existence and been around the draft process and seeing all the smoke screens out there. Man, when there's an injury, when there's a whiff of an injury, especially a knee with a skill player, I had a bad feeling the day before. I talked to a couple of buddies of mine in NFL scouts, personnel officers, And a couple of those guys told me that they had taken Jermod completely off their draft board. And I knew if that were the case that he was going to slide pretty dramatically, and he did to the 4th round. I just hope he gets a shot, and this is not an injury, if he does indeed have to have a second surgery, that keeps him from having a long career. But boy, there's just not a lot of secrets, Bob, when it comes to the NFL draft, when a kid like, certainly a skill guy like that has some type of knee injury.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was tough to see. As you mentioned, McCoy in the 4th round, before he got picked, Chris Brazzell Jr. did go in the 3rd round, the 83rd pick overall to Carolina. Could be a good landing spot for him. I do think it would be great for him to have, some level of success, because it feels right now, and I think a lot of it's directed at specifically Jalen Hyatt with the Giants. I mean, there seems to be a bad rap going out on some of the receivers coming out of Tennessee, saying that the offensive system is not conducive to putting guys in the NFL. I say all that, but I actually think Cedric Tillman's been pretty productive when he's gotten playing time in Cleveland. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Brazzell does there. They got pretty good receivers in Tet McMillan and Xavier Legette. So he's got some serious competition there, but it could be a good opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think we do realize, I don't think enough kudos was given to the Tennessee receiving corps last year. What those three did, their productivity, the consistency. I mean, they did things for 3 receivers in 1 year that in some cases have never been done or haven't been done in a long, long time. Their ability. And when you start talking about schools and offenses and coaches who get bad raps in the NFL, sometimes that just depends on who you're talking to. You never know what what's behind that. Sometimes it's maybe another school feeding that to work against you in recruiting. But no, it's the way Tennessee has played on offense for much of the time Josh has been here, and some of the guys they've sent to the NFL, I think speaks for itself. But I do think Brazzell will have a big career. I think he's a guy that will fit in well there, and certainly be able to get him the football, let him do what he does best.
Yeah. Jermod McCoy, who we mentioned, that one was unfortunate to see. 4th round pick. He's, I think, 101st overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. And what's crazy is how quickly things change, like you were just saying, once they start doing some deeper dives on these players medically. Because after the combine, if you recall, I mean, there was some chatter with a few people of, God, this guy might end up closer to the top 10 based on what he did when he showed out at the combine. But then they did their diligence and found out more stuff. And I agree with you. I just hope, I'm hoping that, it can be one of those situations where he can, kind of defy the odds, so to speak, because seems like a good kid. Just seeing the emotion when he was picked. It was pretty great to see.
No, and he was I know some people say, well, maybe he should have come back and played some last year. I mean, first of all, we don't know where he was physically. Was he really able to play, or what percent he was? And I don't think this injury, the second injury, was not necessarily related to the other. They found a defect that they're going to have to go in, it looks like, and do a second procedure.
Yeah,
that could be, let's hope not, could be potentially career threatening. So that's something that when you go through that whole extensive process with NFL, again, those things show up, whereas sometimes they're not going to show up elsewhere. So I don't think the fact that he didn't play last year had anything at all to do with the fact that he dropped the 4th round. I mean, whether he did or didn't. So I've heard that. I'm sure you've heard that. I know he tried. I know in talking to people close to him that he wanted to play. He tried to play. And once you got into November, and just because when you're a corner and you're coming off an ACL, the biggest challenge is just regaining confidence in that knee. Be able to start and stop and cut, backpedal, all the things you got to do as a corner. And clearly he showed in the combine or workouts, he ran up 4.37. 40. He's still got elite speed, but that's just running the 40. But you're right. It's bad break, bad luck for him. And if things go well for him medically as a football player, there's no doubt that he'll have a really good career in the NFL. He's a true lockdown guy at corner. He's good in zone coverage. He has that type of versatility as a corner that all NFL teams are looking for. And he makes plays on the ball, Bob. That's the other thing. You go back and watch him. He played at Tennessee. He made a ton of plays on the ball. Where he's always seeing the football. He doesn't panic when the ball's coming his way. He knows where it is, and made, as I said, not only interceptions but plays that would take away touchdowns and big plays.
Yeah. Well, we wish him the best, man. That's, I was just happy to see him get taken. I was starting to worry if he would fall off the board entirely, but kudos to the Raiders. Hopefully he can make some hay there. The last two people or Vols that were taken in the draft were Joshua Joseph's 5th round to Washington, and then Tyree West in the 7th round, the 222nd pick overall, going to the Detroit Lions. So we end up with, again, with 5 draftees. And it's kind of interesting. This is compliments of football SID at University of Tennessee, Bill Martin. He posted on X saying that the Vols have, they've had at least four draftees in the top 150 spots in 3 of the last 4 NFL drafts. And they are only one of 4 SEC teams that have been able to do that. You could imagine it's got to be Alabama, Georgia, maybe LSU.
Yeah, LSU. Ole Miss has had a ton too over the last few years. But no, they've done a. When you look at the draft, it's funny. I love to see all these stats that come out after the draft, Bob. Because you can twist them any way you want to twist them, right?
Yeah.
Are we looking at first rounders? Are we looking at total draft picks? Are we looking at what I call premium draft picks, which are first, second, third rounders? But all the different schools sort of have, which is their job, to go on and pick those, sort of pick and choose what number they want to promote. But that's a good stat. I mean, when you've got, so that's basically Bill's stat was essentially guys drafted in the top 4.5 rounds.
Yeah.
When you do the math, those are guys typically that are going to have a good chance to stick in the NFL and play. So that tells you, they've done a nice job. But I think when you get to the elite teams, there's a pretty big separation among those teams who've had first rounders, second rounders. Look at Georgia's first rounders. Over the last 3-4 years. Really compared to everybody else in the conference, it's staggering. Alabama would be up there too. I think Alabama's going 18 straight years now in the first round with 2 first-round picks. Think about that. Not 1, but 2.
Yeah.
18 straight years. What will be fascinating, though, is to see how that evolves over the next 4 or 5 years. If those teams like Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia can continue producing that many draft picks. When you look at it through the lens of Tennessee, I just looked this up before we came on the show. Tennessee's only had 3 first-rounders in the last 10 years, last decade. 3. Ohio State had 4 in the top 11 this year. And so that's where it's a little bit, I go back to when Tennessee was winning SEC titles and winning, and that's forever ago, 2 decades. They were routinely putting multiple guys in the first round. And I think that's where you got to get to. I mean, even Indiana, your homeboys. When did you ever think you'd see 2 first rounders from Indiana in football?
Nah, never. I think they had a total of 8 guys drafted. 8.
Yeah. Here's the stat for you, Bobby. Ready?
Yeah.
The Hoosiers put 2 in the first round this year in the NFL draft. That is the same number of NCAA tournament wins the Hoosiers have had in the last decade. There you go.
Yeah.
Send that to your buddies in Indiana. See if they they think about that one.
They're probably well aware of the 2 wins for sure. So, and then last thing on that note about, again, while this draft wasn't what many had envisioned in terms of placement for some of these players, the Vols' performance under Josh Heupel in terms of placing players in the NFL draft, as evidenced by Bill Martin's post, is far better than the eras that have preceded him. The Vols were only able to accomplish this feat that we just talked about, 4 draftees or more in the top 150 in 3 of the last 4 years. Between 2008 and 2021, CeeLo, it only happened 2 times in a 14-year span. So, there's definitely things that we want to see continue to progress with Tennessee football, but I think we're seeing it become a more consistent, not necessarily the feeder that it once was in its peak years, but kind of headed in the right direction in that regard. The other thing I would add is I mentioned earlier, 7 Vols signed as undrafted free agents. Leading the list, Joey Aguilar found a home, at least to start. He signed a deal with Jacksonville, Bryson Eason with San Francisco, and Miles Kitzelman with Detroit, joining Tyree West there.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see Joey get a shot. And, I know a lot of Tennessee fans were hoping he would win his battle in court and get to come back. You understand why. If a kid like that is going to get an extra $1 million or $2 million to play another year, and, I never thought Joey was a lock to be drafted. I felt like he might have a shot in the later rounds, but that's the difference now. A lot of these guys coming out in the draft are staying, or guys that are staying and not coming out, are making more money playing college football than they are if they're an undrafted free agent. Certainly Joey would have gotten more playing at Tennessee than he would as an undrafted free agent. And that's what is completely changed the landscape now. Is I think it's more and more, Bob, we're going to see kids rethink decisions and stay in school. I mean, you go back to some of the big schools where a quarterback, Tennessee's a good example of this. If you're the starting quarterback at Tennessee, you're going to be able to command $2, $3, $4, $5 million. I mean, Tennessee tried to get some guys in the portal this year. They would have paid $5 or $6 million. They would have paid $5 million to get Sam Levitt, $4 million to get the Sorsby kid who went to Texas Tech. Those kids all came back and playing college football. I think that's going to change the dynamic dramatically over the next few years, especially at that position, the quarterback position.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting times. And then to put a bow on the rest, again, we mentioned a few guys that signed undrafted free agent deals. There were a few more. Jalen McMurray signs one with the Tennessee Titans. Jackson Moy with the LA Rams. Dominic Bailey with Houston. William Wright, this one surprised me a little, but good for him. He got an undrafted free agent deal with the Denver Broncos. And Star Thomas gets invited to training camp and accepts that invite from the Tennessee Titans. So again, a lot of guys getting at least a shot. That's all you can ask for sometimes. If you're not going to get drafted, just get yourself a shot to stick with one of these rosters, and you never know what will happen.
Yeah, and it's, the NFL is full of guys who were undrafted free agents or were drafted late in the draft that have gone on to have, long, successful careers. But I'm going to tell you what, no matter what they're investing in you, and clearly if you're a first-round pick, they're paying you a lot of cash and they think you're going to be a difference maker. But once you get to training camp, and again, I covered the NFL for a few years, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. It doesn't matter if you were drafted. They know pretty quickly. They sniff out pretty quickly who can play and who can't.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's pivot to Vol hoops. Even though it's the off season, boy, there's been a lot of activity here the last few weeks, ever since Tennessee got knocked out of the NCAA tournament in the Elite Eight by eventual national champion Michigan. The roster rebuild that Rick Barnes has been doing has been unbelievable. And that continues on, quite honestly. They add another player in this ongoing roster overhaul, but then they also get some clarity on one of the biggest pieces to last season's roster. And this is one we've talked about for weeks, but it was made official a couple of days ago. Nate Ament makes his decision to enter the NBA draft and announces it formally. And there was, last week, Chris, there was a ton of debate going on by lots and lots of media members and fans. I think Kevin O'Connor with Yahoo, who covers college basketball and pro basketball and does a good job of it, but he put out his version of a mock draft that he projected Nate at the 18th pick overall, which then, spun into, he had been talking with some NBA execs that were saying maybe it's better for him to spend another year in college. And of course, the fan base fed off of that. The media fed off of that. And I can't imagine Rick Barnes was too happy about all of that. But then Nate kind of put it all to rest within a day or so by saying, I'm going to the NBA and I'm moving on. And when you read his announcement, CeeLo, to me, it seemed pretty final.
Well, I think the only debate really was outside the people who knew what the hell was going on, really, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
Media and analysts. I mean, listen, Rick Barnes and that staff, they never for the 1 second thought he was coming back.
Yep.
They'd love to have him. And I want to be very clear here. They would love to have Nate come back. But Rick has told me right on through that they think he's a top 10 pick, and they've told him he should go. You need to go to the NBA. It's a bad business decision if you don't. I mean, listen, mock drafts are what they are, right? We found that out with Jamad. You look at the other way around, the guys go a lot higher than you think they're going to go sometimes. And so, yeah, if he were to slip by some unforeseen circumstance to 15, 16, 17, he can still pull back out of the draft. I think he's got till May 27th to do that. And if that were the case, Tennessee'd find the money to bring him back. I mean, they'd love to have him. But all that aside, there was never really ever any conversation among Rick Barnes and Nate. I mean, I know his mother would and his dad loved Tennessee, and he's loved his experience at Tennessee. But they also understand that it's a business, and you look at what's happened to some kids. They try to play another year, they have a bad year, they get hurt. And if you're a top 10 pick, you're going to make a lot of money. So I know it sort of caught fire in the media and around here. I got asked about it. I couldn't get a tank of gas without somebody stopping me and asking me, hey, is it true that Nate Ament's coming back? And I said, you're listening to Bob Baskerville too much.
Oh, come on.
I'm just joking. I'm joking.
No, I know.
But no, I just never thought he would. But down deep, knowing he's the kind of kid with the kind of family that if circumstances were such, he absolutely would come back because of how much he enjoys playing for Rick Barnes, how much he enjoyed his experience at Tennessee. The family really loved being able to be around and seeing, him grow, not only as a basketball player, but as an individual. He's only 18 or 19 years old, so he's still a young kid. He looks younger than that. He's got that baby face.
Yeah.
But no, I would be shocked too. Just having talked to members of the staff last week, I'd be shocked if he slides out of the top 12. I think he's going to go in the top 10, but I'd be shocked. And I think, I think it's going to happen, Bob. I think he's going to go to these camps, all the combine, NBA combine, and I think he's healthier now. I know he feels a lot ankle. He will show out, and he will only improve his stock by the way he plays.
Well, and I think too, another ingredient in this is just to your point, he's healthier, so he's got that going for him, but also these interviews that he'll have, this kid's so impressive. I mean, what an impressive young man. So I think that'll matter too. So, but you're right. All you had to do was listen to the Vol coaching staff from the start. I mean, we had Greg Polinsky on the radio. God, this was well over a month ago. And he was saying, if I were his parents, I would tell him he's got to go, and, GP is a guy who has a lot of through lines to the NBA from his previous lives professionally. So, I mean, I think our fans and, myself included, I mean, I agree. It would have been great to have him back for another year, but I will tell you, I think there were going to be potential roster dilemmas if that happened. To me, it was not coincidental at all. We talked about it a lot on the radio. The fact that Notre Dame transfer Jalen Harrelson had committed, but he had not signed with Tennessee. But then, CeeLo, he signs almost immediately after the news of Nate's decision comes out. I mean, I think there would have been other dominoes to fall had Nate stayed. Not the least of which is also Jude Harris.
Yeah, financially. I don't know how Tennessee's already going to pay around $15 million for this roster.
Right.
After paying about $9 million last year. Talking to somebody in the league, they think that this coming year, that 13, 14, 15, 16 million might be the average of what SEC teams pay for the 26, 27 roster. So I know that sounds like a lot, but when you go and you get the Harrelsons of the world, and you get a Terrence Hill, and listen, you never say never, but all my intel says that this week that Duke Harris will pull the trigger,
right,
and come to Tennessee. I know his mom is a big fan of the program, big fan of Rick Barnes. Tennessee was right there in it when he went out of high school. In this era, you never say something's a lot, because someone could always drop. What about if we pay you $5 or $6 million? And in fact, I think probably to your point that Michigan has probably been in Duke Harris's ear telling him, hey, Ament's coming back. So you might want to rethink that decision.
Yeah.
Well, we know that's not happening now. So I do think, unless there's a big snag or curveball at the end, I think Duke Harris will be a Tennessee ball. And I think we'll probably hear something this week.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Here's the other one too is, okay, just for a second, let's rewind. If Nate had elected to stay, I don't know if you saw this, but I think this is pretty groundbreaking from the standpoint of the dollars we're talking about. And that is Thomas Houck decided he wasn't going to go into the NBA draft. He was going to finish out his senior year at Florida, which is great for Florida. But then the news came out, and it came from a reputable source. I think it was Sam Vecini with The Athletic, who said that Houck was going to get the equivalent of, he was projecting right outside the lottery, but kind of mid first round.
Mm-hmm.
And that money is for 2 years guaranteed, somewhere in the $8 million range. Well, that's what Florida is paying him. They're going to pay him $8 million. Plus, he has other connections through NIL that could push this up to $10 million for his compensation in the next year. And so I'm not saying if Nate had stayed that he would have been slamming his fist on the table saying, well, I need $8 million too. But he's, from an upside standpoint, he's got as much, if not more so, than Thomas Houck. And so I just think it would have, the economics of it wouldn't have made sense too for Tennessee. Like you said, we're fortunate that Tennessee's got a pretty big wallet this time, but man, everybody's got their limits.
Oh yeah. And it's going to be, people say, well, how's this going to be sustainable? I hear that question all the time. And where's it leading to? I mean, I don't know. I don't see any end to it in sight. I mean, it's just going to continue until schools and boosters and donors and presidents say, yep, you know what? We're done. This is out of control. We're not going to pay this kind of cash. But as long as they're keeping score, Bob, I don't care if it's T-ball. I don't care if it's at your local bowling alley. Certainly in NCAA basketball and football, when they're keeping score and you've got a chance to build rosters and bring in great players, there's always going to be somebody out there willing to dole out a lot of cash to bring in guys. And we're seeing that all over the country. What did Louisville pay two kids? What did they end up paying the two kids at Louisville in the portal?
They said somewhere between 8 and 9.
Yeah. So you had two close to 9 there. And again, Duke Harris is not going to come cheap.
No.
I mean, they'll probably have to pay him about what they paid Nate, which was somewhere between $3 and $4 million.
Yeah.
And the kids they've got in the portal, Harrelson and Terrence Hill, and they're paying, they're paying a lot of cash. But Tennessee lost guys who went on to make more money than Tennessee was willing to pay. And you know what? I say good for them. Good for Bishop Boswell, making over $2 million at Maryland. Good for J.P. Estrella, who's making somewhere around 3.5 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think Maury Evans is going to get about 1.2. Cade Phillips over 1 million. Tennessee would have been in the ballpark with some of those kids, because you got to sort of figure out what your value is. You want to pay guys.
Right.
This guy, Bob Baskerville's at this, Chris Lowe's at this. Ryan Shumpert's, Ryan would be way above us what his value would be.
Should be, yes.
But if those are your values that you're set for a player, and you've had that player in your system for a year or two, you know what he can do, you know what his work ethic's like, you know what his durability's like, you know how coachable he is or isn't, what his consistency's like. Well, you sort of have a pretty good read on that player. And if you set a value, then, and this is sort of Rick Barnes' philosophy, and not only Rick's, but a lot of coaches' philosophy, we're not going to go over that value significantly to keep this person, especially when we think we can go in the portal and get somebody else who's shown more productivity, who's done it consistently against good competition, And that's not to mean that a Boswell won't blow up next year or Evans won't blow up and have great years. Hey,
Sure.
in their case, I hope they do.
Yeah.
But I think that's the strategy that Rick and his staff put in place. We want proven guys, and we want guys. And here's to me the most important part of it. We want guys to come to this program, a proven program that is year in and year out now going to the Elite Eight and help get us to the next level. That's what's important. Yeah, you got to pay them a lot of money, but we want guys that believe in what we're doing here and say, you know what? This is not going to be a rebuilding project we're going to. This is a place that has built a solid foundation, and they continue seemingly to do things every year that, I never thought that team this year was going to be an Elite Eight team, and yet they get there, and there's still more steps they want to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and you're right. They're not done. There's the Juke Harris, the prospect, we'll say for the moment, although we feel like confidence is trending high there. But while all this is happening, the what ifs, Tennessee goes out and adds another player to the roster, what I would call a semi-big, if you will. 6'9" Braden Liu from Kennesaw State. He commits to the Vols. He's a sophomore, so he's got a couple years eligibility left. He averaged about 11 points a game, 5 rebounds per game, a block and a half per game, 2.3 steals per game last season. This guy is not going to be a big offensive piece. He's a defensive ad for sure in my mind, Chris. He was on the Conference USA all-defensive team last year. And I said a semi-big because in this day and age, it cracks me up. Everybody's like, well, is 6'9" big enough? It's kind of like 6'9" is the new 6'7". And I don't know. This guy is long enough. And again, he seems to make plays defensively. And definitely, I think, if you're factoring in Juke Harris is in the picture, they definitely need to fortify the paint a little more from a defensive standpoint. It feels like this guy could do it.
Yeah, Rick's not forgotten about defense. I can assure you that. So
Yeah.
They still have a couple guys, big guys, what I call bigs, and talking to some people over there, they're looking for some more girth too as they continue to fill up the roster. Guys that are, big and wide bodies, guys that can bully some people inside. They don't really, Dwayne Brown, I think, has certainly got that kind of build. He could be that guy. And I do believe if you ask me who are the guys that, of course, there's not many left, but the guy, and I even felt this during the season, it would make the biggest step in the offseason, it would be Dwayne Brown. But no, I think that, this kid, and he's not a guy that doesn't ever shoot from the perimeter. I think what did he take, like 70 threes last year?
He did. Yeah, that's a good mention. I forgot to mention that.
So he can step out. He can step out and draw his man out and shoot the basketball. But to your point, I absolutely think they got to have at least one more, if not two more, big bodies, guys that can, we used to call not space heaters, but guys that can. Remember the old rule when they used to let you foul in the NBA, and Barkley would gather all his guys around him in the huddle and say, "No layups."
Yeah,
now, you can't play like that anymore, but you need guys still that are physically imposing. That when you take the ball to the basket and they do foul you, you're going to know you get fouled, and especially without Felix. I don't think I know Rick Barnes knows, and how much they will miss Felix Akpara next year.
Amen.
He was such a big piece of what Tennessee did defensively. You rarely find a guy who's got that kind of timing to block shots, who is that athletic and who can step out and guard different positions on the court, 15, 20 feet away from the basket. He added a dimension defensively that they're not going to be able to replace with just one guy. They're going to have to sort of share that. Yep. And that's why I think getting, again, to the point you just made, getting at least one more big, maybe even two, depending on who's out there. They won't reach, but if there's another one out there or two, they'll get them.
Yeah, and that's they've got a focus, from what I've heard, on another one, and that's we mentioned this guy last week, 6'11" Luke Bamboye from Texas Tech, super athletic, big, like you said, a little more girth too. Only played 21 games due to injury last season, but where he had some high usage games, he was dominant. He averaged, 4.5 points, 3.5 boards, and 2+ blocks. But he had a couple games where he was like 12 and 8, a couple blocks, and again, this kid is originally from the UK, and it sounds like they're working on some international eligibility matters for this guy before he visits. But it sounds like boy, if they could get him and get Juke Harris, then you're filling out a pretty strong roster at that point.
Yeah. And there's other options. You always got the European route, which you're seeing more and more teams do that.
Yeah.
There's the JUCO route, so they will not run out of options. And I think what you do is you sort of start, just like you do with the draft board, the NFL. You go at one position, you go 1 through 20, and you rank them. And I know that's what Tennessee's doing with all these different positions. This team will have a different look. There are going to be times out there where you'll see 4 players anywhere between 6'7" and 6'9".
Yeah.
More guys that are in that what I'd call stretch forward type range. Guys that can score. There was rarely, I don't know how many, I don't think many games at all this year where you watch Tennessee play and you had 4 guys out there that you felt realistically could score the basketball, could get their own shot, create their own shot. Now, that's not to say that guys like Boswell didn't make big shots from time to time. Certainly JP had some games where he was really, really effective in the low post. Even Amari Evans, that last game against Vandy, scored 20 plus.
Right.
But 4 guys at the same time, can score and have proven they can score, double-digit average scores. You will see that next year. And I don't know that you've seen that a lot over the last few years. That team with maybe, you got to help me here, Bob, maybe that Grant Williams team was the closest.
Yeah.
Because even when Dalton Connect was there, it was him. Kennedy Chandler's 1 year, maybe, but I think you're going to see more of those guys again from the 6'4", 6'5" to 6'7", 6'8" range on the floor that all have the ability to score and make 3-pointers.
Yeah. It's going to be really fun to watch for sure. All right, we're going to get to some baseball in just a second, but before we do that, got to give a quick mention to our very, very great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. They're your local insurance group, and they're proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all, and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about because this is where they live too. The Tate Insurance Group, live, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. If you want to learn more about the Tate Insurance Group, you don't have to go too far. You can go to their website at tateinsuranceGroup.com. You can also give them a call at area code 865-862-8233. That's 865-8233. Again, the Tate Insurance Group. And we, as always appreciate their support and sponsorship of the Lowdown. Let's talk a little baseball now, because some stuff happened as the week ended. We had a Thursday through Saturday series, at least on paper, against Alabama. And after a brutal Thursday night opening performance, Tennessee may have saved their season with a dominant doubleheader sweep on Friday against the Tide. The Thursday night series opener, Chris, I think you might have been there. It was, what I saw on TV, it was pretty awful because in addition to the 10 hits that Vols pitching allowed, they also allowed another 16 base runners, 16 by way of walks. There were 10 of those, and then batters hit by pitches, 6 of those, on the way to a 12-8 loss to the Crimson Tide.
No, I was the good luck guy, Bob. I missed the right game. I missed the Thursday game. I was there for Friday's doubleheader.
Good for you. Good for you.
I was not slept rock for the Vols on Thursday.
Yeah.
I did watch some of it. And that's the thing. When you play like that, you have one of those games, and the SEC, all you got to do is look at how jumbled the middle of those standings are right now. You're going to have some of those days. You just are. I don't care what your pitching looks like, how hot you've been or haven't been hitting the baseball. And that was just one of those games. And you hear Josh Ulander say it all the time, we got to flush it and move on. And to me, the most impressive thing about this team, and I understand they're still fighting to get into the NCAA, is, man, when they've been knocked down, they keep getting back up. Yeah. And I've heard people say, well, I just don't know. And And then you have what happened Saturday. You get great pitching, you get great hitting, your defense is outstanding. And now all of a sudden you look up with, 3 series to go in the SEC. I don't know, Tennessee their resume looks about the same. There's a couple right there at the top, Texas and a few others, but Tennessee's resume looks about like 7 other teams, bunch right there together. So it's going to come down to these last 3 series.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, going back to that Thursday game for a second, Landon Mack and Cam Appenzeller were uncharacteristically bad. They combined to allow 8 hits, 9 earned runs, 7 walks, 2 hit batters in less than 6 innings pitched between the two. I just don't believe that's going to happen that often. That was that's an outlier. And, because Tennessee, this is the thing, man. The bats do feel like they're coming around. They had 8 runs on 11 hits themselves in that game, but they dug such a hole because of the pitching. They just really couldn't overcome it. So, and then to add to an additional challenging situation already, late Thursday night, it was announced that Saturday's 3rd game of the series was getting bumped up to Friday due to inclement weather predictions on Saturday, making Friday a doubleheader. And what had me a little bit concerned there, CeeLo, was that meant that with the doubleheader, that moved up the Vols' typical Sunday starter, Evan Blanco, by nearly 48 hours. He had 4 days rest. But hey, man, with their backs against the wall and with you in attendance, which obviously made a difference, the Vols turn in a dominant performance all day long. 21 runs on 24 hits in 2 games. The first win was a run rule 10-0 win, followed by an 11-4 nightcap win. I think something else that's noteworthy here, in that 3-game series, even including the mess on Thursday night, Tennessee had only 1 error in those 3 games, while Alabama had 6, and they had costly errors at that. I mean, they pretty much botched themselves out of the game in that nightcap.
Yeah, when you get a team down, you're at home, and Tennessee hasn't done this all year, but when you got the ability to sort of put a team out and take them out, Tennessee did that in both those games. And Tennessee has been so good there at home for forever. And I think this year it hasn't been quite the same, but that was huge to be able to take both those games on Saturday. That the day game, it was good attendance. The day game, that night game, the crowd was fantastic. It was loud. It was they were in the game. A lot of people there, and it felt like, to me, and I haven't had a chance to go to many SEC games this year. I went to some of the ones early, but that crowd Saturday night or Friday night, I keep saying Saturday, Friday night, felt like old times in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Just how electric that place was.
Yeah. Well, and the other one that, I was happy to see, Blaine Brown. I think we were even talking about this last week, man. That guy was struggling, but he had a big week, and I'm hopeful that he has that he's kind of bounced back, and because, man, when he starts to hit the ball like he started hitting it against Alabama, that changes the whole calculus of this team. You've already got guys, like Henry Ford, and I think Reese Chapman, guest of the show earlier this year. Reese Chapman's had a great year with the bat, and Grimmer, Grindlinger, you name it. There's just a bunch of guys, and man, if Blaine Brown can get it going with some consistency now, that's and hats off to Josh Elander. I know there's been some fair share of criticism on Josh, which some of it's unfair, I think. But he stuck it out with Blaine Brown. A lot of people were thinking it was inevitable he was going to need to get benched, and it just didn't happen.
That's a tough call for managers, though, or coaches, because you're
Right.
stuck with this guy all year long. You've seen him. He's there with him every day, bad in practice. You know what he's capable of. And if you're going to wait to this point in the season, this deep in the season, you're going to pull the plug on a guy like that, unless you just got somebody, which I think if they did, they already would have given him more bats. Then I don't see the gamble in that. You stick with the guy, you give him confidence, because, hey, all anybody remembers is going forward. You get hot as a batter and you start coming through in key situations like he did on Friday the rest of the way, then that type of confidence your head coach has in you pays major dividends. And they're going to need his bat. They need him to hit. He's not going to hit 12 more home runs, but they need his bat in key situations. I like the fact that Josh is stuck with him again, because I think he knows what he's capable of. They brought him in for a reason, and then to see him deliver, as you said, Bob, on Friday was pretty cool.
So looking ahead, I think that the Vols are 10-11 in conference play, 3 series left, 9 games. There's been this talk that the water line to kind of ensure you make it into the tournament's probably 14 conference wins. By the way, not for nothing, but Tennessee's RPI went up about 5 notches with this series win against Alabama. They're inside the top 30 in RPI rankings now at, I think, 29. So you got a real opportunity now. I mean, you could even conceivably go 4-5 and probably be in pretty good shape. But if you happen to go 5-4, finish 15-15 in conference, that would be great. They're taking on what I think is a vulnerable Kentucky team in Lexington this weekend, CeeLo. And we know that's been a little bit of a house of horrors for Tennessee from time to time. But Kentucky lost their series with South Carolina this weekend. So they're scuffling a little bit.
I tell you what, though, if we've learned anything about SEC baseball, teams that look vulnerable, sometimes that next week aren't so vulnerable. And that's, Tennessee's seen both sides of that. They got to continue to play at the level they did Friday against Alabama. I talked to different people. Our friend Chris Burke, who does a terrific job on the SEC Network, about what's the magic number to get in the tournament. I agree. I think 14 wins in the SEC are a lot to get in, especially with Tennessee's RPI. So that means they'd have to go, they got 9 games left. They'd go 4-5.
Yep.
But I think even at 13 with their RPI, they would have depending on what happens to some other conferences, I think they would have a decent chance still to get in with 13 SEC wins. It certainly would not be a lot, but they would still have 50-50 chance, maybe even better than that, because their metrics and the numbers are so good. But 5-4, maybe you're on the cusp there, maybe hosting. Certainly if you go 6-3, which you got some tough teams to play. Texas, one of the top teams in the country. You mentioned the Kentucky series at Kentucky. Texas is in Knoxville, then you end at Oklahoma, another really good baseball team. But I really believe, this is a cliche. I think every series in SEC baseball stands on its own. It's almost like it's a season unto itself. And it doesn't matter what you've done, who's pitching well, who's not pitching well, who's batting, who's not. You've got to play well and clean baseball that weekend, or you're going to get beat in this league. And I think that's where if you want to see Tennessee finish the season playing clean baseball, hitting better with runners in the scoring position. And again, I think their starting pitching, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, has been really good. And really, I think better than the record indicates. I think if someone gave you Tennessee starting pitching numbers right now, Bob, and you did not know what the record was, you would think they were probably at least 2 or 3 wins better.
Yeah. No, and we failed to mention that, but I mean, a tip of the hat on Friday, that doubleheader against Alabama, just to rewind for a second. Tegan Kuhns goes 8 innings, shutout ball, only gave up, I think, 3 hits. And then Evan Blanco follows up in the nightcap with a really strong 6-inning performance. I mean, those guys, it's not hyperbole to say those guys might have saved the season for this baseball team.
Yeah, well, what Tegan did, didn't have to use any arms in that second game. He was the only guy. And that's, man, in the SEC on the weekend, and you don't have to use but one guy in the second game when you're already down you're down a game in the series. That opens your entire bullpen up. You'd already used Appenzeller the first game, so that opens your entire bullpen for the second, what was the third game, second game that day. No, that's huge for any baseball team. And listen, Tegan's been clutch all year long. From his numbers, he's stacked up winning performances on top of winning performances all year long. Yep. And to have that Saturday, certainly that Sunday duo with he and Blanco that's why I say if Tennessee gets into a regional, and I think they will get. I think they're going to make it. I think that's a starting pitching rotation in a regional format that's pretty daunting for the other team.
Oh, I agree. I fully agree. Yeah, we'll just have to see. Kentucky, like I said, you're right. It could swing either way. They're vulnerable right now, but man, if Tennessee could go in and win that series, puts them in a really, really good spot going into these last two. Because you're right, Texas is loaded. Oklahoma in Norman, that'll be a tough series too. But I don't know. Feels like things changed once we swept that doubleheader on Friday. So a little more optimism than we had before. All right, well, that wraps it up for this edition of The Lowdown. We'll be back next week to talk more Vol hoops. Might have a special guest on tap. You'll have to stay tuned for details on that, along with the latest going on with Vol baseball and probably a little football as we enter the month of May. As always, RTI covers it for you every day. So keep it locked in on RockyTopInsider.com and all socials for the very, very best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. A reminder to hit that like and subscribe button for the show on YouTube and download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. We always appreciate that support. CeeLo, always appreciate being able to talk ball with you, my friend. I hope you have a great, great week ahead.
Same to you, Bob. Look forward to next Sunday. We'll be into May. Have a better idea of what Tennessee's basketball roster looks like and their chances in baseball, making a regional.
Kind of crazy. The calendar is flying by. Before you know it, it'll be football, man. All right. Well, thanks to every one of you out there again for making us part of your Sunday routine. And we'll look forward to you joining us right here next time on the RTI Lowdown.